I logged in! Ma'am, you clearly don't belong in this section!
Security will escort you to the main terminal where people like you should be waiting. The words cut through the marble-floored VIP lounge like a blade, sharp and certain. Victoria Langford stood behind the premium check-in counter, her platinum blonde bob, perfectly styled burgundy blazer fitted to perfection. She looked every inch the regional operations manager. She was polished, authoritative, and completely convinced of her own judgment. Before we dive into this story, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below, and if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, hit that subscribe button and share this video. The woman standing across from Victoria didn't flinch. Jasmine Brooks, 42, held her boarding pass and ID in steady hands. Dark jeans, cream cashmere sweater, simple black flats, nothing about her screamed wealth or status. That was intentional. "I have a valid ticket," Jasmine said calmly, sliding her documents across the polished counter. "First class, departing at 7:30. Victoria picked up the boarding pass with 2 fingers like it might contaminate her manicured nails. Her eyes narrowed as she examined it, then looked Jasmine up and down with unconcealed disdain. "This is a premium facility," Victoria said, her voice carrying across the spacious lounge. "We serve a very exclusive clientele. I'm sure there's been some mistake." Other passengers in the VIP waiting area began to notice. A few looked up from their phones and laptops. Some shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the scene that was about to unfold. Jasmine's expression remained neutral. "There's no mistake. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Victoria's smile was cold, practiced. "I don't think you understand. This is Premier Sky Terminal. Our services start at $15,000 per flight. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in the main terminal with the regular passengers." The pause before regular passengers hung in the air like poison. A Hispanic man in a security uniform approached from across the lounge. Miguel Rodriguez, 45, had been watching the interaction with growing concern. His radio crackled softly at his hip. "Is there a problem here?" Miguel asked, though his tone suggested he already knew which side he was expected to take. Victoria turned to him with relief. "Yes, we have an unauthorized person trying to access premium services. Could you please escort her to the appropriate area?" Jasmine stood perfectly still. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice, didn't show any sign of anger. But something in her dark eyes shifted a quiet steel that Victoria completely missed. "I'll be staying right here," Jasmine said simply. "This is exactly where I belong." What Victoria didn't know was that she had just insulted the woman who owned the very ground she was standing on. In exactly 17 minutes, her entire world would crumble, and she would have no one to blame but herself. Premier Sky Terminal gleamed like a jewel in the early morning light. Located adjacent to Seattle's main airport, the private aviation facility catered to the ultra-wealthy CEOs, celebrities, politicians, and old money families who valued privacy above all else. The main lobby featured Italian marble floors, original artwork, and a reception area that looked more like a luxury hotel than an airport terminal. Jasmine Brooks had built this place from the ground up. After selling her tech startup for $200 million at age 38, she'd invested heavily in aviation. Premier Sky was her crown jewel, a facility that promised discretion, luxury, and above all, respect for every passenger who walked through its doors. This morning she wore no jewelry except simple stud earrings, no designer logos, no obvious signs of wealth. She wanted to see how her staff treated passengers who didn't fit their mental image of success. The anonymous complaints she'd been receiving suggested some employees had forgotten the core values she'd built this company on. Victoria Langford commanded the VIP check-in area like a general surveying her troops. At 38, she'd climbed the corporate ladder through a combination of competence, connections, and an unwavering belief that appearance mattered more than substance. Her burgundy blazer was tailored perfectly, her pencil skirt professional yet flattering. Every detail of her appearance had been calculated to project authority. She'd started at Premier Sky 3 years ago, quickly establishing herself as someone who maintained standards. To Victoria, that meant ensuring the right kind of passengers accessed premium services. She'd never been explicitly told to discriminate, but she'd learned to read between the lines to make judgments based on clothing, speech patterns, and skin color. Miguel Rodriguez watched from his position near the security checkpoint. 22 years in airport security had taught him to read situations quickly. Something about this confrontation felt different, more charged than the usual disputes over seating or baggage. The black woman at the counter carried herself with quiet confidence, while Victoria seemed unusually aggressive even for her. At a nearby gate, Rachel Turner, 29, processed boarding passes with practiced efficiency. As a junior gate agent, she'd witnessed Victoria's behavior countless times, but had never felt empowered to speak up. Today felt different, somehow more public, more dangerous. James Mitchell sat in the pilot's lounge reviewing flight plans for his route to New York. At 52, the senior captain had seen every kind of passenger drama imaginable, but something about the raised voices near check-in made him look up from his charts. Sofia Herrera, 24, lounged in a corner booth, phone in hand. The social media influencer had 50,000 followers who hung on her every word about travel, lifestyle, and social justice. She'd been documenting her luxury travel experience when the confrontation caught her attention. Her finger hovered over the record button. David Park, 35, a business consultant returning from client meetings in Seattle, sat with his laptop bag at his feet. He'd paid for premium services to avoid exactly this kind of drama. But as voices rose near the check-in counter, he couldn't help but listen. Elena Martinez, 48, emerged from the operations office carrying passenger manifests. As terminal operations assistant, she knew every detail about Premier Sky's ownership structure. Her eyes widened as she recognized the woman at Victoria's counter. The same woman whose photograph hung in the executive boardroom, the woman who signed all their paychecks. The VIP lounge buzzed with an undercurrent of tension. Conversations became quieter as passengers sensed drama unfolding. Some pulled out phones, others pretended not to notice. A few shifted closer to witness what was happening. Victoria remained oblivious to the storm she was creating. In her mind, she was simply maintaining standards, protecting the exclusive atmosphere that made Premier Sky special. She'd handled situations like this before, people who didn't belong trying to access services above their station. Jasmine stood at the center of it all, calm as the eye of a hurricane. She'd spent 4 years building this terminal training staff, establishing policies based on respect and dignity for every passenger. Now she was seeing how those values held up when tested by unconscious bias and institutional arrogance. The morning sun climbed higher, casting sharper shadows across the marble floor. Security cameras captured every angle. The scene was set for a confrontation that would change everything, not just for the people involved, but for an entire industry that had grown too comfortable with quiet discrimination. "Let me see your credit card," Victoria demanded, her voice carrying across the lounge like a whip crack. "And I'll need additional identification." This boarding pass could have been printed by anyone. Jasmine reached into her simple black purse and produced a card. No flashy metal, no obvious prestige indicators, just a standard black card that Victoria examined with theatrical suspicion. "This doesn't look right," Victoria announced loudly. "Miguel, I think we have a situation here." Miguel approached reluctantly. His instincts told him something was off about Victoria's certainty, but years of hierarchical conditioning made him defer to management. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked. "This woman is attempting to board a $15,000 flight with questionable documentation," Victoria said, making sure her voice carried to the other passengers. "I suspect fraud." Rachel Turner looked up sharply from her gate counter. She'd processed Jasmine's reservation herself 3 days ago. Payment had gone through without issue. Passenger information had matched perfectly. The accusation of fraud made her stomach clench. "Ma'am, I processed your reservation," Rachel said quietly, stepping closer. Everything was in order. Victoria's head snapped toward Rachel like a striking snake. "I didn't ask for your opinion, Turner. Return to your post." Rachel flinched and stepped back, but her eyes remained on Jasmine with sympathy and growing concern. James Mitchell folded his flight charts and stood up. As a senior pilot, he'd seen enough passenger disputes to know when situations were escalating unnecessarily. This felt personal, charged with something beyond normal procedure. "Is there something I can help with?" James offered his captain's uniform, lending immediate authority to his presence. Victoria's smile became even colder. "Captain Mitchell, we're simply following security protocols. Nothing that concerns flight operations." But James didn't move. He'd noticed other passengers watching, some with phones out. Whatever was happening here was becoming very public very quickly. Sofia Herrera had her phone positioned discreetly, live streaming to her 50,000 followers. Her commentary was whispered but passionate. "You guys, I'm watching something really disturbing happen right now. A black woman is being harassed for trying to board her flight and management is treating her like a criminal." Comments flooded her stream. "This is disgusting. Call the police. Get their names. Make this viral." David Park closed his laptop and stood up. As someone who'd faced subtle discrimination in business settings, he recognized the microaggressions playing out in real time. "Excuse me," David said firmly, "but this woman has shown proper documentation. What exactly is the problem?" Victoria turned toward him with barely concealed irritation. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. Please return to your seat." "Actually, it does concern me," David replied. "We're all passengers here, and we all deserve to be treated with respect." A murmur of agreement rippled through the nearby seating area. Other passengers were beginning to pay attention, and their expressions ranged from uncomfortable to outright disapproving of Victoria's behavior. Elena Martinez stood frozen near the operations desk, clutching her passenger manifests. She knew she should speak up, knew she should identify Jasmine as the terminal owner, but fear of Victoria's retaliation kept her silent. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside while we verify your credentials," Victoria said to Jasmine, her voice now edged with frustration at the growing audience. "I've provided valid identification and a confirmed boarding pass," Jasmine replied calmly. "What additional verification do you require?" "Don't take that tone with me," Victoria snapped. "I'm trying to protect the integrity of this facility. People can't just walk in here and expect premium services without proper... What?" David interrupted, his voice rising. "She's shown her ID and boarding pass. What more do you want?" "Sir, I'm going to ask you to step back," Miguel said reluctantly, torn between his duty and his growing discomfort with the situation. Sofia's live stream was exploding with viewers. Her follower count was climbing rapidly as people shared the stream across social media platforms. The hashtag Premier Sky Scandal was already trending in Seattle. "This is being recorded," Sofia announced clearly. "Everything that's happening here is being broadcast live to thousands of people." Victoria's face flushed. "Put that phone away immediately. Recording is not permitted in this facility." "Actually," James said quietly, "there's no posted policy prohibiting personal recording in public areas." The pilot's contradiction of Victoria's authority sent a shock through the confrontation. Other passengers began pulling out their own phones, documenting what they were witnessing. Rachel Turner made a decision that would change her career. She walked over to her computer terminal and pulled up Jasmine's reservation details. "Ms. Brooks' reservation is confirmed and paid in full," Rachel announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. There are no flags, no issues, no problems with her documentation. Victoria's eyes blazed with fury. "Turner, you're out of line. Return to your station immediately or you'll be written up." But Rachel stood her ground. "I processed this reservation myself. The payment cleared the passenger information matches perfectly. There is no legitimate reason to deny her boarding." The crowd of onlookers was growing larger. Other passengers from different areas of the terminal were drifting over, drawn by the commotion. The atmosphere was becoming electric with tension. Jasmine remained perfectly still throughout the escalating confrontation. She made no dramatic gestures, raised no objections, showed no anger. She simply stood there, radiating quiet dignity while chaos swirled around her. "This is harassment," an elderly white woman said from her seat nearby. "Plain and simple harassment. Someone should call corporate," another passenger added. "Someone should call the news," Sophia said into her phone, her live stream now approaching 100,000 viewers. Victoria realized she was losing control of the situation, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. Instead, she doubled down on her position. "Security. I want this woman removed from the premises, immediately," she commanded, her voice shrill with authority and desperation. Miguel looked between Victoria and Jasmine, his radio heavy in his hand. Years of training told him to follow orders from management. But everything about this situation felt wrong, felt dangerous, felt like a career-ending mistake waiting to happen. The terminal had gone quiet except for the soft buzz of conversation and the occasional ping of social media notifications. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Jasmine finally spoke, her voice carrying clearly across the marble floor. "Are you absolutely certain this is the path you want to take?" David Park stepped forward, his business consultant instincts recognizing a crisis in progress. "This has gone far enough," he said firmly, addressing Victoria directly. "This woman has shown proper documentation. Her reservation is confirmed and she's been nothing but polite and professional. What you're doing is wrong." Victoria's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flush creeping up her neck. "Sir, I've warned you once to stay out of this matter. This is a security issue that—" "No." David interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations. "This is a discrimination issue and everyone here can see it." Sophia's live stream had exploded to over 200,000 viewers, with comments flooding in from around the world. She held her phone steady, capturing every moment while providing real-time commentary. "You guys, this is insane," she whispered to her audience. "This woman has done absolutely nothing wrong and she's being treated like a criminal. The business consultant is standing up for her and the gate agent confirmed her reservation is legitimate." The comment section was on fire. "Call the ACLU. Get their badge numbers. This is going viral. Justice for this woman." James Mitchell, the senior pilot, moved closer to the confrontation. His captain's uniform commanded respect throughout the aviation industry, and his presence shifted the dynamic in the room. Ms. Langford James said quietly, "I've been flying for 28 years. I've seen every kind of passenger situation imaginable. This isn't about security or procedure. This is something else entirely." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Captain, I don't appreciate the implication. I'm following established protocols." "What protocols?" Rachel Turner interrupted, her voice stronger now that others were speaking up. "I've worked here for 2 years, and there's nothing in our manual about additional verification for passengers who present proper documentation." A ripple of support moved through the growing crowd. An elderly Hispanic woman in an expensive coat nodded approvingly. A young white couple whispered to each other, clearly disturbed by what they were witnessing. Miguel stood frozen, his hand hovering near his radio. Every instinct told him this situation was spiraling out of control, but Victoria was his supervisor. Going against her could cost him his job. Elena Martinez clutched the passenger manifests tighter, her knuckles white with tension. She knew Jasmine's identity, knew this was about to become a catastrophe for everyone involved, but speaking up meant risking Victoria's wrath. "I'm calling corporate," announced a well-dressed businessman from his seat across the lounge. He had his phone out, scrolling through contacts. "This is unacceptable behavior from airport staff." "Good," David said loudly. "Everyone should be calling. This needs to be documented and reported." Victoria's confidence began to waver as she realized how many people were now involved, how many phones were recording, how many witnesses were speaking against her. But her pride wouldn't let her retreat. "All of you need to mind your own business," she said, her voice rising to match her desperation. "This is a private facility, and we have the right to refuse service to anyone you deem what?" Sophia called out, her phone capturing Victoria's every word for her massive audience. "What exactly are you deeming about this woman that makes her unworthy of service?" The question hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Everyone in the lounge understood the implication, understood what was really happening, understood that Victoria had just been challenged to say out loud what they all knew she was thinking. Victoria's mouth opened and closed without sound. She couldn't articulate her real reasoning without exposing the prejudice driving her actions. She doesn't fit our customer profile," Victoria finally managed. The words hit the room like a physical blow. Several passengers gasped audibly. Sophia's live stream exploded with outraged comments. "Customer profile," James repeated incredulously. "Are you actually saying what I think you're saying?" Rachel Turner felt something break inside her chest, the last vestige of respect for her supervisor, the final thread of willingness to stay silent in the face of injustice. "Our customer profile is anyone who can afford our services and treats our staff with respect," Rachel said clearly. "This woman has met both criteria. You're the one who's failed both tests." The crowd murmured approval. Someone started clapping slowly, and others joined in. The applause wasn't triumphant. It was somber, the kind of acknowledgement that comes when people witness someone take a stand against institutional prejudice. Victoria looked around the room wildly, suddenly realizing she was completely isolated. Every face looked back at her with expressions ranging from disappointment to disgust. "Miguel," she commanded desperately, "escort this woman out immediately, or you'll be written up alongside Turner." Miguel's hand moved to his radio, then stopped. He looked at Jasmine, who stood perfectly calm in the center of the storm, and then at Victoria, whose desperation was becoming ugly and obvious. Ma'am, Miguel said quietly to Victoria, "Maybe we should call your supervisor before we escalate this further." Victoria's eyes blazed. "I am the supervisor here. I'm in charge of this terminal." Elena Martinez finally found her voice. It came out as barely a whisper, but in the tense silence of the lounge, everyone heard it. "No, you're not." All heads turned toward Elena, who stood pale and trembling near the operations desk. "What did you say?" Victoria demanded. Elena's voice grew stronger. "I said you're not in charge of this terminal. You're just the regional operations manager for Skylink Airlines. You don't own this facility." The distinction might have seemed minor to some, but Elena's words carried a weight that made Victoria's face go white. "Who owns it doesn't matter," Victoria said, but her voice had lost its commanding edge. Elena looked directly at Jasmine, then back at Victoria. "Yes," she said quietly, "it really does." The tension in Premier Sky Terminal's VIP lounge had reached a breaking point. Victoria Langford stood isolated in the center of a crowd that had turned completely against her, while Jasmine Brooks remained perfectly calm, watching the situation unfold with the patience of someone who understood exactly how this would end. "I'm calling the police," Victoria announced, her voice cracking slightly. "This woman is trespassing, and all of you are interfering with airport security operations." Trespassing, David Park laughed bitterly. "She has a confirmed reservation and valid boarding pass. You're the one who should be worried about the police." Sophia's live stream had reached 500,000 viewers, with major news outlets beginning to pick up the story. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications as the hashtag Premier Sky Scandal spread across social media platforms. "This is absolutely unreal," Sophia said to her audience, her voice tight with emotion. "A woman is being threatened with arrest for the crime of trying to board the flight she paid for. This is happening in 2024, people." This is happening right now. Miguel Rodriguez stood paralyzed between his duty to management and his growing certainty that Victoria was leading them all toward disaster. His radio crackled with routine security updates, but the normal airport business felt surreal against the backdrop of the crisis unfolding in front of him. "Call the police," James Mitchell said firmly. "Please. Call them right now." Victoria looked startled by the pilot's support for her threat. In fact, James continued, "Let's call everyone. Airport Authority, Skylink Corporate, the FAA, local news. Let's get all the official oversight in here and let them sort this out." Rachel Turner was already dialing. "I'm calling the Airport Authority first," she announced loudly. "They need to know what's happening in their facility." "Turner, you're fired," Victoria screamed, her composure finally cracking completely. "You're fired, effective immediately." "You can't fire me," Rachel replied calmly, still holding her phone. "I don't work for you. I work for Premier Sky Terminal Services, and last I checked you work for Skylink Airlines. Different companies, different authority structures." Victoria's face went pale as she realized the implications of Rachel's words. In her fury and desperation, she'd forgotten the complex corporate structure that governed operations at Premier Sky. Elena Martinez stepped forward, her hands shaking, but her voice steady. "Ms. Langford, I really think you should stop this before it goes any further." "You don't understand. I understand perfectly," Victoria shrieked. "I understand that none of you respect authority anymore. I understand that political correctness has made it impossible to maintain standards." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several passengers recoiled visibly. Sophia's live stream chat erupted with outraged responses. An older white gentleman in an expensive suit stood up from his chair. "Ma'am, I've been coming to this terminal for 5 years. I've never seen behavior this unprofessional from staff. You're embarrassing yourself and this facility." "I'm embarrassing myself," Victoria laughed hysterically. "I'm the one trying to maintain the exclusivity that makes this place special. Without standards, without careful screening, this becomes just another common airport terminal." David shook his head in disgust. "Listen to yourself. Just listen to what you're actually saying." Jasmine finally spoke again, her voice carrying clearly across the marble floor. "Ms. Langford, are you absolutely certain you want to continue down this path? Because once certain words are spoken, certain actions taken, there's no walking them back." Something in Jasmine's tone made everyone in the room pause. There was no anger in her voice, no threat, just a kind of sad certainty that made Victoria hesitate for the first time. "Are you threatening me?" Victoria asked, but the fight was going out of her voice. "I'm offering you one last opportunity to reconsider," Jasmine replied. "To step back. Think about what you're doing and perhaps handle this situation differently." Elena Martinez couldn't stay silent any longer. "Ms. Langford, please. Just look at the passenger manifest. Look at who you're talking to." Victoria snatched the papers from Elena's hands, scanning them quickly. Her eyes found Jasmine's name, but she saw only what she expected to see: another passenger entry that looked perfectly normal. "I see nothing here that changes anything," Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Look at the owner information section," Elena whispered urgently. "Look at the corporate structure documents attached to the manifest." But Victoria was too far gone, too committed to her course, too blinded by pride and prejudice to hear the warning in Elena's voice. "I don't care who she knows, who she's connected to, or what she thinks she can do," Victoria said loudly. "Miguel, I'm giving you a direct order. Remove this woman from the premises immediately, or face disciplinary action." Miguel's hand moved reluctantly toward his radio. The room held its collective breath. Sophia's live stream had passed 700,000 viewers. News vans were pulling up outside the terminal. Airport authority vehicles were approaching the main entrance. Rachel finished her phone call to airport security. "They're on their way," she announced. Real security with real authority who actually understand the law. Victoria's phone began ringing insistently. The caller ID showed her regional director's number, but she rejected the call too deep in crisis mode to think clearly. "This is your last warning," Victoria said to Jasmine, her voice now a desperate rasp. "Leave voluntarily or be removed by force." Jasmine looked around the room at the faces watching her David's supportive determination. Rachel's brave defiance, James's professional concern, Sophia's fierce advocacy, Elena's desperate worry, Miguel's conflicted loyalty. Then she looked back at Victoria, and for the first time, she smiled. Ms. Langford Jasmine said quietly, "I think it's time you met the owner." The words meet. The owner rippled through the VIP lounge like an electric current. Victoria Langford's confident expression wavered for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her perfectly made-up features. What owner, Victoria asked, though something in her voice suggested she was beginning to understand that she'd made a terrible mistake. Elena Martinez stepped forward, her hands no longer shaking. She'd made her choice to speak the truth, and now there was no going back. The owner of Premier Sky Terminal, Elena, said clearly, "The person who built this facility, who employs all of us, who signs the checks that pay our salaries." Victoria looked around the room wildly. "The owner isn't here. Mr. Davidson is in Europe this month. Mr. Davidson sold his shares 3 years ago," Elena interrupted. "The current owner has been standing right in front of you this entire time." Sophia's live stream was approaching 1 million viewers, with major news networks beginning to broadcast live from the parking lot outside. Her phone was burning hot in her hand from the constant notifications. "You guys," she whispered to her audience, "I think we're about to witness the most epic comeuppance in internet history. This woman has been harassing the actual owner of the terminal." The comments section was moving too fast to read, "No way. This is insane. She's so fired. Justice incoming." David Park understood before most others in the room. His business experience had taught him to recognize the subtle signs of real power, and he'd been watching Jasmine's calm confidence with growing realization. "You own this place," he said to Jasmine. Not a question, but a statement of dawning understanding. Jasmine nodded slowly. "Premier Sky Terminal. Every square foot, every marble tile, every leather chair you're sitting on. I designed this facility, oversaw its construction, and established every policy that governs how passengers should be treated here." Victoria's face went completely white. The blood drained from her cheeks so quickly that her burgundy lipstick looked garish against her pale skin. That's impossible," Victoria stammered. "The owner is... You can't be... You don't look like..." She couldn't finish the sentence, but everyone in the room understood what she was trying to say. "I don't look like what Ms. Langford Jasmine asked quietly. I don't look like someone who could build a $200 million aviation facility. I don't look like someone who could revolutionize private air travel on the West Coast. What exactly don't I look like?" "Rachel." Turner felt tears welling up in her eyes, not from sadness but from the pure satisfaction of watching justice unfold in real time. James Mitchell, the senior pilot, removed his captain's hat in a gesture of respect. "Ma'am, I had no idea. I'm sorry you had to experience this in your own facility." "You have nothing to apologize for," Captain Jasmine replied. "You spoke up when it mattered. You stood for what was right." Miguel Rodriguez finally understood why his instincts had been screaming warnings throughout the entire confrontation. He slowly unclipped his radio and set it on the nearest chair. "Ma'am," he said to Jasmine, "I'm sorry. I should have recognized that this situation was wrong from the beginning. I let hierarchy override my judgment." Victoria was backing away slowly, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. The reality of her situation was sinking in, and panic was beginning to replace arrogance. "I didn't know," she whispered. "How could I know? You were dressed so what? David demanded. So casually, so normally, so like a human being instead of a costume display. Elena stepped closer to Victoria, her voice gentle but firm. I tried to warn you. Multiple times. You wouldn't listen. Sophia's live stream had become a phenomenon. News outlets around the world were picking up the story. Premier Sky Scandal was trending globally. Her phone showed messages from CNN, NBC, BBC, and dozens of other media organizations requesting interviews. This is bigger than just one incident, Sophia said to her audience. This is about every person who's ever been judged by their appearance, every professional who's been underestimated, every human being who's been treated as less than because of unconscious bias. Jasmine pulled out her phone and made a quick call. Carla, it's Jasmine. I'm at Premier Sky and we have a situation that needs immediate corporate attention. Can you conference in the Skylink Airlines executive team? We need to discuss Ms. Victoria Langford's employment status and behavior toward passengers. Victoria's phone began ringing again. Her supervisor's supervisor, corporate executives who'd been monitoring social media and were already in crisis management mode. Answer it, Jasmine said calmly. I think they want to talk to you. The VIP lounge had filled with passengers, airport security, and airport authority personnel who'd responded to the multiple calls. News crews were setting up outside the terminal's glass doors. The quiet, exclusive atmosphere Victoria had been so desperate to protect had been shattered completely. But strangest of all was the sense of anticipation in the room. Everyone understood they were witnessing something significant, something that would be talked about and shared and remembered. Jasmine stood in the center of it all, still perfectly calm, still gracious and dignified despite everything she'd endured. She looked around the room at the faces watching her, some supportive, some curious, some ashamed of their earlier silence. Ladies and gentlemen, she said clearly, thank you for your patience. I know this situation has been disruptive to your travel plans. We'll have everything resolved very shortly. Victoria's phone kept ringing. Her hands shook as she finally answered. The conversation that followed would change everything. Victoria Langford's phone conversation with her supervisor lasted exactly 90 seconds. The color drained from her face as she listened, her free hand gripping the check-in counter for support. Yes, I understand, she said weakly into the phone. No, I didn't realize. Yes, sir. I'll handle it immediately. She ended the call and stared at the device like it had bitten her. Around the VIP lounge, dozens of passengers, staff members, and newly arrived airport security personnel watched her in complete silence. Sophia's live stream had passed 1.2 million viewers, making it one of the most watched real-time incidents in social media history. Her commentary had become breathless with excitement. You guys, her supervisor just told her who she's been harassing? Sophia whispered to her audience. Look at her face. This woman just realized she's been insulting her own ultimate boss. But instead of apologizing, instead of backing down gracefully, Victoria Langford did something that shocked everyone in the room. She doubled down. I don't care who you are, Victoria said, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. I don't care who you know or what you own. You came into this facility dressed inappropriately, acting suspiciously, and refusing to follow proper security protocols. As the on-duty manager, I have the authority to maintain standards. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Sophia stopped whispering commentary to her audience, too stunned by Victoria's continued defiance to speak. Jasmine Brooks regarded Victoria with something approaching pity. Ms. Langford, you just spoke with your supervisor. What exactly did they tell you? They told me you claim to own this terminal, Victoria replied, her voice cracking slightly. But I've seen scam artists before. I've seen people who make false claims about ownership and connections. Just because you have someone's phone number doesn't make you legitimate. David Park laughed bitterly. Are you actually suggesting she's running some elaborate con game? To what end? What could she possibly gain by pretending to own an airport terminal? Attention, Victoria said desperately. Social media fame, viral video content, the ability to play victim and get sympathy from people like you. Elena Martinez stepped forward holding a tablet displaying the terminal's corporate registration documents. Ms. Langford, would you like to see the legal ownership papers? The business license, the construction permits, all filed under Brooks Aviation Holdings with Jasmine Brooks as primary owner and CEO. Victoria snatched the tablet and scrolled through the documents frantically looking for any sign of fraud or deception. But the paperwork was official, detailed, and undeniably legitimate. These could be forged, Victoria said weakly, but her voice carried no conviction. Rachel Turner approached with her computer terminal wheeled over on a mobile cart. Here's the employee directory, she said, turning the screen toward Victoria. Jasmine Brooks, CEO and founder, employee ID number 0001. Your supervisor's number is 847. Your number 1247. She literally hired the person who hired the person who hired you. James Mitchell stepped forward, his captain's uniform lending gravity to his words. Ma'am, I've been flying for nearly 3 decades. I've seen pride destroy careers, families, and lives. You have one chance left to do the right thing. Victoria looked around the room, desperately seeking any face that showed support or sympathy. She found none. Passengers were recording with their phones. Staff members were shaking their heads in disgust. Security personnel were whispering among themselves about the unprecedented situation. You're all ganging up on me, Victoria said, her voice breaking. This is mob mentality. You're letting emotions override proper procedure. The proper procedure is to treat every passenger with dignity and respect, Jasmine said quietly. That's the foundation this terminal was built on. That's the first line in our employee handbook, which apparently you've never read. Sophia's live stream chat was exploding with increasingly outraged comments. Viewers were sharing the stream faster than the platform could track. Premier Sky scandal was trending not just nationally, but internationally. I need to see additional identification, Victoria said desperately, making one last attempt to maintain her authority. Corporate ownership documentation, official business registration, something that proves, Victoria. Elena interrupted gently. Her picture is hanging in the executive boardroom, the same boardroom where you attended orientation 3 years ago. Victoria's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The memory was beginning to surface, a brief tour of executive offices, formal portraits of company leadership, a professional headshot of a black woman labeled as founder and CEO. She'd forgotten it completely, had never connected that formal portrait with the casually dressed passenger in front of her. Miguel Rodriguez finally found his voice. Ma'am, he said to Jasmine, I owe you an apology. I should never have threatened to escort you out. I let someone else's prejudice cloud my judgment. Miguel, you were put in an impossible position, Jasmine replied with genuine warmth. You handled it as well as anyone could under the circumstances. Victoria was spiraling now, grasping for any way to save face or maintain control. Even if you do own this terminal, that doesn't give you the right to disrupt operations, cause scenes, or interfere with security procedures. David Park stepped between Victoria and Jasmine, his business consultant instincts recognizing dangerous desperation. She hasn't disrupted anything. She presented proper documentation, answered your questions politely, and stood quietly while you created this entire scene. She refused to comply with additional verification requests, Victoria protested. Because those requests were discriminatory and had no basis in actual policy, Rachel said firmly. I've processed thousands of passenger reservations, and I've never seen someone subjected to the treatment you gave her. Victoria's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed the airport authority director. Her hands shook as she answered. Ms. Langford, this is Director Stevens. I need you to step aside immediately and allow our personnel to resolve this situation. Do not speak to any media, do not make any additional statements, and report to my office within the hour." Victoria ended the call and looked around the room one final time. Her perfectly styled appearance was beginning to show cracks. Her makeup was smudged from stress. Her hair was slightly disheveled. Her hands were trembling visibly. "This isn't over," she said quietly to Jasmine. "This isn't over." Jasmine's response was gentle but final. "Yes, Victoria, it is." As airport authority personnel took charge of the situation, the VIP lounge transformed from a site of confrontation into something resembling a community meeting. Passengers who had witnessed the incident refused to simply return to their seats and forget what they'd seen. David Park had appointed himself as an unofficial spokesperson for the passenger witnesses. "We need to make sure this gets documented properly," he told the growing group. "Every person who saw what happened needs to give a statement. I've got everything recorded." Sophia said, her phone still streaming live to an audience that had swelled past 1.5 million viewers. From the very beginning, when she accused this woman of not belonging here, an elderly white woman in an expensive coat approached Jasmine directly. "Dear, I want you to know that what happened here today is absolutely unacceptable. I've been flying private for 40 years, and I've never seen anything so disgraceful." "Thank you," Jasmine replied warmly. "Your support means more than you know." James Mitchell organized the airline crew members who had witnessed the incident. As pilots and flight attendants, we have a responsibility to speak up about discrimination in aviation. This can't be allowed to continue anywhere in the industry. A young Hispanic couple who had been quietly observing from across the lounge approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, we wanted to say we're sorry this happened to you," the woman said. "And we want to help however we can." Rachel Turner was coordinating with airport authority personnel, providing documentation and witness contact information. "I want to make sure everyone understands that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a communication breakdown," she told the investigating officer. "This was clear, deliberate discrimination. Miguel Rodriguez had removed his security badge and was speaking quietly with his supervisor who had arrived on scene. Sir, I need to be completely honest about what happened here. Ms. Langford's behavior was inappropriate from the very beginning, and I should have intervened sooner." Elena Martinez was being interviewed by investigators providing detailed background about the terminal's ownership structure and employee policies. Ms. Brooks established very clear guidelines about passenger treatment, Elena explained. Dignity, respect, and equal service regardless of appearance or background. Ms. Langford violated every one of those principles. Sophia's live stream had become a phenomenon beyond just social media. News organizations around the world were monitoring the feed and requesting permission to broadcast excerpts. Her phone buzzed constantly with interview requests from major networks. "What you're witnessing here," Sophia said to her audience, "is bigger than just one incident. This is about every person who's been made to feel like they don't belong, every professional who's been underestimated, every human being who's faced discrimination." A businessman in an expensive suit approached the group gathering around Jasmine. "I'm an attorney," he said, offering his business card. "If you decide to pursue legal action over this incident, I'd like to help." "I appreciate that," Jasmine replied, "but I'm more interested in making sure this never happens again than in punishment." David nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the right attitude. Change the system, don't just punish individuals." An airport authority investigator approached Jasmine respectfully. "Ma'am, we're conducting formal interviews with all witnesses. Would you be willing to provide a statement about what occurred?" "Of course," Jasmine said. "I want everything documented thoroughly." A young black woman who worked as a gate agent for another airline had heard about the incident and sought permission to enter the VIP lounge. "Ma'am, I just wanted to thank you," she said tearfully to Jasmine, for standing up, for not backing down, for showing that we belong wherever we choose to be. The encounter brought tears to several onlookers' eyes. The personal impact of the incident was becoming clear. This wasn't just about one woman being mistreated, but about representation and dignity for everyone who had ever felt excluded. James Mitchell was speaking with his airline's corporate office, ensuring they understood the situation and their crew's response. "We stood up for what was right," he told his supervisor, "and I'd do it again in exactly the same way." Rachel Turner was being praised by passengers for her courage in speaking up despite Victoria's authority over her. "I couldn't stay silent," Rachel said simply. "Some things are more important than job security." A travel blogger who had been working in the corner booth approached Sophia. "Would you be willing to do a joint interview about what you witnessed? This story needs to reach as many people as possible." "Absolutely," Sophia agreed. "But let's make sure we focus on the real issues: discrimination in travel, the courage it takes to speak up, and the importance of allies." Elena Martinez was crying softly as she spoke with other terminal employees who had arrived to support her. "I was so scared to say something," she admitted, "but watching her stand there so calmly, so dignified, while being treated so poorly, I couldn't let it continue." David Park was organizing contact information from passenger witnesses. "We all have a responsibility to make sure our voices are heard," he told the group. "This can't be allowed to become just another viral video that people forget about in a week." An older Hispanic man who had been quietly observing from his seat finally approached Jasmine. "Senora, my wife and I have experienced situations like this before. Not as severe, but the same underlying disrespect." "Thank you for handling it with such grace." Jasmine was surrounded by supporters, but she remained focused on the broader implications of what had occurred. "This isn't about me personally," she told the gathered crowd. "This is about creating an environment where everyone is treated with dignity, regardless of how they look or what assumptions people make about them." Miguel Rodriguez approached the group hesitantly. "Ma'am, I know I was part of the problem initially. Is there anything I can do to help make this right, Miguel?" "You recognized when something was wrong and you adjusted your position," Jasmine said kindly. "That takes character. Help us make sure the training and policies are better so other security personnel don't face the same difficult situation." The VIP lounge had become a meeting ground for people from different backgrounds, different experiences, but united in their recognition that they had witnessed something significant. The incident was becoming a catalyst for broader conversations about respect, dignity, and equality in public spaces. Sophia's live stream had evolved from documentation of discrimination into a forum for discussion about solutions and change. Her audience was engaged in serious conversations about how to address bias and support victims of discrimination. "This is what community looks like," Sophia said to her viewers. "When people see injustice and choose to speak up, choose to stand together, choose to demand better." As airport authority investigators continued their work and Victoria Langford was escorted to an office for formal questioning, the passengers and staff who had witnessed the incident remained united in their commitment to ensuring the truth was told and changes were made. The incident had lasted less than an hour, but its impact was already spreading far beyond Premier Sky Terminal. The first sign that the Premier Sky incident had reached corporate boardrooms came when James Mitchell's phone rang during his interview with airport authority personnel. The caller ID showed Skylink Airlines' Chief Operations Officer, not his direct supervisor, but the executive 3 levels above that. "Captain Mitchell, this is COO Bradley Richardson. I understand you were present during an incident involving one of our regional managers and a passenger at Premier Sky Terminal." "Yes, sir," James replied, stepping away from the investigation area for privacy. Ms. Victoria Langford was treating a passenger in a completely inappropriate manner. Multiple crew members and passengers witnessed discriminatory behavior. "Captain, I need you to understand that this incident is being monitored at the highest levels of our organization. The passenger in question is Jasmine Brooks, the owner of Premier Sky Terminal, and one of our most important business partners. Ms. Langford has potentially damaged a relationship worth hundreds of millions of dollars. James felt his stomach drop. While he'd suspected Jasmine was someone important, the full financial implications of Victoria's behavior were staggering. Sir, I documented everything I witnessed. Multiple passengers recorded the entire confrontation. Ms. Langford's behavior was inexcusable regardless of who the passenger was. But knowing the business relationship makes it even worse. Captain, I want you to know that your professional conduct during this incident will be noted positively in your personnel file. Corporate appreciates crew members who stand up for our values. Meanwhile, Rachel Turner was receiving a very different kind of phone call. Her direct supervisor at Premier Sky Terminal Services was calling to check on her status. Rachel, I'm hearing reports that you stood up to a Skylink manager who was mistreating a passenger. Is that accurate? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Langford was accusing a passenger of fraud without any basis, making discriminatory comments and trying to have her removed from the terminal. I couldn't stay silent. Good. I want you to know that Premier Sky Terminal Services commends employees who uphold our values of dignity and respect. Ms. Langford had no authority over you or your employment, and you were right to stand your ground. Rachel felt relief flood through her body. She'd been prepared to lose her job for doing the right thing, but instead she was being praised for her integrity. Sophia's live stream had caught the attention of major news networks, but more importantly, it had reached social media influencers and activists with massive platforms. Her phone was buzzing with collaboration requests and interview opportunities. I'm getting messages from journalists, civil rights organizations, and other influencers, Sophia reported to her audience. This story is spreading faster than anything I've ever posted. Premier Sky scandal is trending worldwide. David Park was being contacted by his own company's diversity and inclusion department. As a business consultant who specialized in organizational behavior, his employer wanted to understand his perspective on the incident. This wasn't subtle bias or microaggressions, David explained to his colleague via phone. This was overt discrimination clearly motivated by racial prejudice. The woman being targeted handled it with incredible grace and dignity. Elena Martinez received the most surprising call of all. Jasmine Brooks personally contacted her office line to thank her for speaking up. Elena, I know it took courage to contradict your supervisor in front of all those people. I want you to know that your integrity and bravery will be remembered and rewarded. Ms. Brooks, I'm just sorry it took me so long to find my voice. I knew what was happening was wrong from the very beginning. Elena, you spoke up when it mattered most. That's what counts. Miguel Rodriguez was having a very different experience. His security supervisor had arrived on scene and was conducting a formal review of his actions during the incident. Miguel, you were placed in an extremely difficult position. Your incident report will note that you showed restraint and professionalism under pressure from a supervisor who was clearly acting inappropriately. Sir, I should have recognized sooner that Ms. Langford's behavior was wrong. I let hierarchy override my judgment. Miguel, the review board understands that security personnel often face conflicting orders. Your decision to ultimately de-escalate rather than follow through with inappropriate removal orders shows good judgment. The financial implications of the incident were becoming clearer as corporate executives began calculating potential damage. Premier Sky Terminal generated approximately $50 million annually in revenue for Skylink Airlines through their partnership agreement. Victoria Langford's behavior had potentially jeopardized one of their most profitable business relationships. Skylink's CEO personally called Jasmine Brooks to apologize and discuss damage control measures. Ms. Brooks, I want to personally apologize for the unconscionable behavior of our employee. Ms. Langford's actions do not represent our company's values or policies. I appreciate the call, Jasmine replied. But I'm more interested in understanding how this behavior was allowed to develop and what changes will be implemented to prevent future incidents. We're conducting a comprehensive review of all regional management practices. Ms. Langford will be terminated immediately, and we're implementing additional training and oversight measures. Termination isn't enough, Jasmine said firmly. I want to see structural changes that address the root causes of discriminatory behavior, not just punishment after the fact. The conversation marked a turning point. What had started as a customer service incident was evolving into a corporate restructuring discussion. Victoria Langford sat in the Airport Authority Director's office, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of her mistake. Her phone had been ringing constantly with calls from corporate executives, human resources personnel, and crisis management specialists. Ms. Langford, you've created a situation that has damaged relationships between multiple organizations, Director Stevens explained. Your behavior toward Ms. Brooks was not only personally inappropriate but professionally catastrophic. I didn't know who she was, Victoria said weakly for perhaps the 10th time. That's exactly the problem, Stevens replied. You made assumptions about a passenger based on their appearance, treated them with disrespect and suspicion, and escalated the situation despite multiple warnings from your own staff. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text message from Skylink's Human Resources Director report to corporate headquarters immediately. Bring personal belongings from your office. Security will escort you from the building. The professional consequences were swift and decisive. Within 2 hours of the incident, Victoria Langford's access badges were deactivated. Her corporate accounts were suspended, and her employment with Skylink Airlines was terminated. But the incident's impact extended far beyond one person's career. Corporate executives across the aviation industry were reviewing policies, conducting emergency training sessions, and reassessing their customer service protocols. The viral nature of Sophia's live stream had made Premier Sky Terminal synonymous with both discrimination and the consequences of unchecked bias. Airlines that operated out of the terminal were scrambling to distance themselves from Victoria's behavior while demonstrating their commitment to equality. James Mitchell received a follow-up call from his airline's chief pilot, informing him that the company was implementing new crew training on recognizing and responding to discrimination incidents. Captain, your actions during this incident exemplify the professional standards we expect from our crew members. We're using your response as a training example for other personnel. Rachel Turner learned that Premier Sky Terminal Services was promoting her to a supervisory role with specific responsibilities for training new employees on customer service excellence and bias prevention. The professional consequences rippled through multiple organizations, changing policies, procedures, and personnel practices in ways that would last for years to come. Victoria Langford sat in the Airport Authority Director's office, staring at her termination letter in disbelief. 3 years of climbing the corporate ladder, 3 years of building what she thought was a successful career destroyed in less than 2 hours. This can't be legal, she said desperately to Director Stevens. They can't fire me for following security protocols. Ms. Langford, you weren't following security protocols, Stevens replied patiently. You were engaging in discriminatory behavior that violated federal anti-discrimination laws, your company's policies, and basic human decency. Victoria's perfectly applied makeup was streaking down her cheeks as the reality of her situation sank in. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls from corporate executives, human resources personnel, and now, most frighteningly, employment attorneys. I want to file a complaint, Victoria said, grasping for any way to regain control. That woman Jasmine Brooks, she set me up. This was a test, a trap designed to make me look bad. Stevens looked at her with something approaching pity. Ms. Langford, even if Ms. Brooks deliberately dressed casually to observe how passengers are treated, which she has every right to do as the terminal owner, your response was still completely inappropriate. In the VIP lounge, Jasmine was conducting an impromptu press conference with the journalists who had arrived on scene. Sophia continued live streaming her audience, now approaching 2 million viewers worldwide. I want to be very clear about something Jasmine said to the assembled reporters. This incident wasn't about me personally. This was about a pattern of discriminatory behavior that affects countless passengers who don't have the resources or platform to fight back. A reporter from CNN raised her hand. Ms. Brooks, what do you want to see happen as a result of this incident? Comprehensive changes in how airlines train employees, how terminals implement anti-discrimination policies, and how the industry addresses unconscious bias, Jasmine replied. Individual punishment isn't enough. We need structural reform. Back in the director's office, Victoria was spiraling deeper into desperation and denial. You don't understand, she told Stevens frantically. I was trying to protect the terminal's reputation. We have standards to maintain. If we let just anyone access premium services... Ms. Langford, please stop talking, Stevens interrupted. Everything you say is making your situation worse. Victoria pulled out her phone and began scrolling through social media, watching in horror as videos of her confrontation with Jasmine spread across every platform. The hashtag Premier Sky Scandal was trending globally, with millions of people sharing the footage and expressing outrage at her behavior. This is ruining my life, she whispered, watching strangers around the world condemn her actions. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. Her phone rang with yet another call from Skylink Corporate, this time from the legal department. Ms. Langford, this is attorney Patricia Williams from Skylink Legal. I need to inform you that the company is conducting a full investigation into this incident. You are not to speak to any media outlets, social media platforms, or other external parties about this matter. What about my severance package? Victoria asked desperately. What about my benefits? I have a mortgage, car payments, Ms. Langford, you were terminated for cause due to discriminatory conduct. There will be no severance package and your benefits end immediately. The call ended, leaving Victoria staring at her phone in shock. In less than 3 hours, she had lost her job, her income, her benefits, and her professional reputation.